Welcome to another edition of Full Stack Life. My name is Rick Hurst and I'm going to be talking about Node.js today. One of my favorite subjects. I love Node. For those of you who have no idea what that is, it's just JavaScript on the server side. Amazing, huh? We can use our favorite language on the server and it's really easy to set up, especially if you're using a framework, something like Express.js, which is the one I'm going to show you because it's super easy to use. You can be up and running in no time. I'm going to show you how to get up and running with a simple hello world example, and from there the rest is easy. Okay, so I want to talk about Node.js, one of my favorite subjects. I love JavaScript, so obviously I love JavaScript on a web server. I think it's really awesome, and it's very easy to get set up. As long as you've got Node installed, which isn't very difficult, you can be up and running real fast in terms of building a little web server and being able to hit an endpoint and create some sort of API. So first things first, if you have Node installed, you can check which version you're running. I'm running, let's just zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm running 1.2.0. Also has a Node package manager, I can check the version of that, 2.5.1. So if you can do those two things, half the battle is done. Okay? Alright, so I'm going to go to create a folder here called, I'm just going to call it my node, okay? And let's just go inside my node. And I'm going to create a little file, just going to call it readme.markdown. You don't need to do this, I guess, but here we go. Okay, working with Node. Right, so what's step one? Once you've obviously installed Node, is to create an app.js file. It doesn't have to be called app.js, you can call it server.js or something. I'm going to call mine app.js, so I have a new file here called app.js. Save that. And let's make a start. If I just do console log hello, oops, and let's run it. Okay, so I'm going to go node app.js. See what it did? It printed out hello in the console for me. So there's the world's simplest Node thing, yeah, where you can just print something onto the screen. I'm going to show you how to use modules in Node because that's kind of important. Whenever you're working with normal JavaScript files and index HTMLs, what you tend to do is bring in like a jQuery script file, and then you bring in your main.js and so on and so on. With Node.js, you use this thing called require, which is very easy to use. You just do this. You're going to say var. I'm going to call it how about this? Okay. First of all, I'll create a little object and then I'll import it. So I want to have a little bit of information. I can have something like this, add 3, and this can be a nice little function that will take a value and add 3 to it. Okay. If I want to use that, it's very easy. Let's run it. Didn't like that semicolon there, that's because you need the bracket, of course, and run it one more time. There we go. So that's normally how you would use a little method here. I'm going to put this into a library. So here we go, I'm going to create a new folder here called libs, and inside that I'm going to create a file called my math. There we go. I can take this and drop it in there. Now in order to use this inside here, I have to use something called require. So I'm going to use the same naming convention here. You don't have to use capitalized, that's just something I always do. And then you use the word require. And I can point to it, can't I? Well, I'm currently in app.js, so I need to kind of make sure I'm in that folder and go into libs like this. Oops, libs. And then my cool math. All lowercase would help. I want to see if that's going to do it, okay? So what it says, undefined is not a function. It didn't like it. And the reason you didn't like it is because you can't just point to a random file and hope you have access to that, like you could with a script file. There's something special you've got to do, and it's called module. Think of it as this is your nice little module. Exports equals to anything you want to export. And in this case, I want to export that. So let's try again. And then everything works. So if I go in here and start changing things around to make my add3 function add 2, there we go. It does exactly what you expect it to do. And you can add more functions, you know, add 4, and just going to flush that out a little bit. Okay. You can have as many of these as you like being used within your code. Alright? So that's the world's stupidest module being brought in with simple hello being brought in there, okay? Now, if you want to use Node.js, the chances you're going to be using it as a web server. So let's mimic that effect. I'm going to do a little timeout here. And I'm going to say handle response. And that's going to happen after 3 seconds. So create a little function called handle response. I want to run this after 3 seconds, as if I've hit this web server. So it waits as if I'm waiting for a request. A request comes in at my web server, and it does that and it immediately exits. So it would be nice if it wouldn't have to exit, and we could actually just use some of the built-in functionality of Node and actually handle this as a web server. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to do Express equals require Express. It's very similar to what I've got here, isn't it? But this is pointing to a library that, or a framework that we're going to bring in. We're not going to drop it in here. We're going to bring it into its own folder. And the way Node works, if you're working with third parties or even your own, you can have this npm system which will bring these things in for you. Okay, how to do that? That easy. Package.json. This package.json file can be more elaborate, of course. In this instance, I'm just going to say dependencies. And say I would like to bring in Express. Now I could specify a version, or I could just put star. You really want to specify the version, but for now I'm just going to put a star in there. So any version of Express will do. And let's see what happens if I do that. Okay, so what I like to do is prod at it till I break it, and then show you why it's breaking. Okay, so cannot find module Express. Well, it's because Express is not in there. So if I've declared it as here as a dependency, how does it know to bring it in? And the steps you go through is Npm Install. What this will do is that will go in and bring in my dependency for Express. You see what's happened? I've got Node.js modules here with its own little Express library. Very similar to what I've got going on in here. Okay, and you can see all those things being brought in. In fact, if you look closely, Express has their own set of Node modules, the things it requires as well. Okay, now let's try and run it, see if we get the same sort of stuff. No, everything just works normally. Okay, so now we have Express. We could have a look at it and find out what's going on inside of it. Console, dir Express. See what's actually been brought in. Let's make this a little bit bigger. There we go. So this is Express. You'll probably use quite a lot of these, such as I think you've got get is very common, post. Yeah. You've got all these methods available to you. Yeah. Let's show you how to use it. So to use Express and create your own web server, it's dead easy. You just run it like that. And now we have app. And in fact, I can do the same thing and look at app, can't I? And run it again. Okay. So this is your web server. You've got all this information in here. Alright, Now, if you want your website to listen for incoming requests, we have to do this. And that will open up a port for us to listen on. But we have to specify which port we want. I'm going to say 3000, and that should allow us to listen on that port. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this set timeout, and I want to call handle response when we hit an endpoint. And to do that, all we do is say app get some URL handle response. Okay, so we're listening on this port. If we go to this port, localhost 3000, and go to some URL, this will run. And then will tell me everything it knows about the app, and it will print some stuff on the screen. Okay. See what we've got here? This is running. Now, do you notice it's not exiting, it's remaining there. So let's just go over to my browser. 3000, right? So the URL I wanted to go to was it Michael URL? Yeah, it was some URL, wasn't it? Redo that. So it's hanging, but that's okay because we haven't closed the response. So what's happening is we're in here, it's printed hello 7, so it has worked, it's accepted the response, but it's just hanging because we haven't provided a response back. So let's come out of this with control. By the way, to exit this, when it's hanging like this, it's just control C, and that brings you back out. Okay, and then it ends. Then back in. So during handle response, what we really want to do is have a look at what's being sent to it and respond. And this is just one of those things you've got to learn. You've got to have request and response. Let's have a look at the request. In fact, let's have a look at the request headers. And let's print those out. There's more to it than just the headers, but I think that's more than enough to study. And then once we're done, we can figure out how to deal with the response in a second. Right, so let's just run that. Hit that again. So now what we have is we have this object literal here. Yeah, see all that? In other words, we can find out that we're on a Mac, for example. Yeah, you can find out interesting information about this, and then it's still hanging. It needs a response back. In order to provide a response back, we have to use this response. I'm going to send some JSON back, response JSON, and I'm going to send it some data. Now this data can be anything. For example, I could just put a standard object literal in here. Oops, there we go. Okay, so it's just a normal object literal there. I'm going to try and send that back. Okay, so I've got my JSON coming back, everything I expect, and the server's still hanging. It hasn't closed it, it's kept it. So no matter how many people hit this URL, no matter how many times I go to this URL and refresh it, it's going to keep doing the same thing, doesn't it? See it there? Hello 7, hello 7, hello 7, and each time it's looking at this information here. Okay, so that we have the beginnings of something, don't we? I want to show you middleware because that's one of the most important parts about this, I think. What I'm going to do is I'm going to listen for some incoming requests and make sure that only Mac users can view this, for example, or just PC users. In order to do that, I can look at those request headers and do a little bit of evaluation on here. I can figure out whether or not the user agent includes Mac OS. Okay, so let's just do this. If this is the string I'm looking for, Mac OS. In order to do that, I'll do request headers. Whoops. And you notice the way they say user agent like this? Whoops. I need to do this square bracket notation. It doesn't like that hyphen. Yeah, so request has a user agent index of, and this is just how you find something in this. Index of Mac OS. And as long as that doesn't equal -1, then it's there, which means this is a Mac user. So I'm going to say console log Mac user. Right. Now, if we're not a Mac user in this particular instance, I would like to give a message to say, sorry, you're not allowed in here. Okay. So I'm just going to do response JSON, and then I can do any object literal of my choosing. I'll just do a little message in here. Okay. Otherwise, it's going to carry on here. I always, and you don't have to do this, but I usually do. I always have a return just when I'm ever doing something like this to exit out completely. Could do if else, but I'm going to do it this way. So in other words, if we reach line 14, then we know we're maybe on a PC, for example. Okay, and it can get the full information. Let's move this over a little bit. Okay, so essentially we've created some middleware. Let's just check that. Okay, let's go and hit the URL. So I'm not allowed in, yeah, because I'm a Mac user. That's the idea about it. If you were coming from a different computer, it would let you straight in. Now you don't want to fill up all your little views because you've got these routes going on here and this view here. You don't want to fill up your views with all this stuff. So there's something you can do which is kind of cool. I'm going to put this as my middleware. I'm going to say function Mac only. Oh, it's actually no Mac, right? And this function, I can take all this stuff, drop that in there, and if we're a Mac user, we're saying, sorry, you're not allowed in, otherwise, I'm going to call next. And this is just a keyword that you'll see quite a lot of when you're working with Express, and it just means once this has gone through and you're not returning it, you carry on to the next part, and this will then go over here. So you take the request, take the response, and a keyword called next. In order to run no Mac, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put middleware dot no Mac, like that. I'm going to create a little var called middleware is equal to, actually I'm going to write it like this. Bear with me as I structure this. Just like that, my core math. Remember we did this? Yeah. So I can take all this and I'm going to save this as middleware.json. JavaScript, I'm sorry. I'm going to drop that in libs. So now I have two modules. Obviously you need to bring it in. Okay, so we've got middleware, we've got two pieces of middleware, package.json, app.js, and now we can reference our middleware as well. Let's just copy this over. And what should happen is when it hits this URL, it's going to run through a series of middleware. I can have as many things going on in here as I like, but I just have one item in this array of middleware here, and it's going to go through all that, and if I'm on a Mac, it's going to go straight over here, it's going to exit and say you're not allowed in, and it won't even go any further. If we're not on a Mac, it will carry on to the next part, which is essentially here. So you know if you're in here, you're, for example, a PC user, or it might be on Linux, but some other device, but I'm just saying hello PC user for now, and it's using our other piece of our other little module over there as well. Okay, so let's try that. So it's saying I'm not allowed in, saying I'm a Mac user, so everything is working, and we have our routes quite straightforward here. We have our initialization. What else we got? I think of it this way, view. I guess we have some kind of system-wide model really. Okay, that's all there is to it. So we've brought in Express framework, we've created a little app here, We've got a URL to point to. We've created a little bit of middleware. We're running a function of our choosing. We're listening on a certain point, and we're bringing in our own libraries as well. We've got two little pieces of middleware going on there. And in order to expand upon this a little further, let's just do one last thing. You might have a standard URL here, which is your home page, and you don't care if they're on a Mac or not, so you don't have that at all. And then you could say maybe homepage or show homepage. And show homepage, as this is just an API, not actually a website. I'm going to do this. Okay, that's all there is to it. Building out upon this is a matter of using things like templating engines, but having said that, I really don't recommend using these templating engines and piping out data and rendering actual index pages back. I think it's very wasteful. What I tend to prefer doing is this kind of stuff. Just to wrap up here, yeah? If these are your web applications, I like the idea of this. Whoops. This is obviously the internet, and this is your web server over here. This is your Node.js. And when the requests come in, this should just be pinging the endpoint for API information and then receiving that all the way back. The content delivery network, which hosts things like index files, your HTML files, JavaScript files, CSS files, I'd have them on a content delivery network served here, and then your JavaScript via something like get.json or post, using jQuery probably, will go all the way to your Node server. So you keep this very lightweight and just keep it for an API, so that you never have to do anything more than something like that. Okay, not many lines of code, right? 23 lines of code here, a couple of modules, package JSON. Obviously get a little more specific and detailed in there. There's more things you can add later, but I think that's a good starting point. So what have we done? I'll just recap. App.js, we've got a couple of modules. We brought in Express and a couple of routes and views, and the rest is up to you. Alright, hopefully that's been relatively interesting. It's not a lot of code, is it? Alright, good stuff. See you later.